I'm Zini Abraham, and this is Project Create Peace. Today I'm going to show you how to use the stencil. You've probably got one of these in the mail, thank you. And inside you'll find your stencil. Now, it's got the elements of the ground, earth, and mass, and the Fibonacci spirals, and the fountain of life, and it's got your lotus and your tree. And this is how you line it up. There's a little circle right here in the middle of your stencil, and you're going to place that in the middle of your paper. So you can eyeball it. You can also take a ruler and measure your base and make sure that it's like on this piece of paper, which is an 11 by 15, which I cut down to 11 by 11 because I like peace on a square piece of paper. So I'm going to put my piece on this 11-inch piece of paper about 3 inches up from the bottom. So I measure that out, and it looks to be about 2 inches on each side. And again, if it's not exactly perfect, you can always trim it later. With a very sharp pencil, you're going to want to trace around the outside. I always like to start at the top of the spirals and trace around those. It's pretty simple. Now I start with the fountain. Now I think about how the fountain is going to flow. Because it's a stencil, the fountain doesn't flow right off of the stencil like this. You don't want to cap in those bottoms. Those you're going to have to extend once you get it on your paper. So take your pencil and think about how the fountain is flowing, and just do from the top down. All right, the fountain's done. So now we're just going to get right in here in these nice small spots and go around the base. Pretty simple. The hardest thing is just holding it in place. So, and if you get it out of place or you find that you didn't get all the way around something, you can always go back. It's not that hard to line up. And then we get these little lines in here. All right, so that's what that looks like. And I'm not real happy with that, so I'm going to try to line that back up. And I'm going to go just around this a little bit harder. I must not have had my pencil just right, but you can see it's pretty easy to fix. I'm happy with that. All right, so I'm going to set that aside just for a second because I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to complete my ground here. So one of the things that you want to think about is that this ground, this square at the bottom that represents Earth, ground, the mass, the thing that holds us all together, this needs to look like it has some dimension to it. The purpose is that it looks like a box. So we want to just complete, we've given you just the perspective parts, and you want to take those and then complete them across to complete this rectangle at the bottom. And that's just a few lines with your ruler. And again, there's some limitations to the stencil, but the stencil gets you really far as a nice, a little helping hand to get you creating peace. And then my pencil, there's a few little bridges here you've got to connect at the bottom. All right. The pencil that I'm using for this is a water-soluble pencil, graphite pencil. So this is going to dissolve a little bit when I use water with it. Oh, it looks like I missed one of these here too. So again, I can go back and line things up, and I missed one of the streams on my fountain. So there it is. That's what it should look like. I like to go in and I like to expand this oval just a little bit. I like it to touch my Fibonacci spirals. This is everybody's preference. So when I am extending this fountain, I like to bring that all the way down here like this, and that just has the fountain of life running right off of the mass. So we've got these extended all the way down to the bottom. And then this one here in the middle, I like to bring it all the way up to the top. when I was first creating peace, I was thinking about how the 4 streams that come out, there's actually 8, so it's 1/2 of the stream, how each of those represents the 4 elements. So earth, fire, air, and water are represented in this particular version of the peace symbol. And if you want to do that, you can create these as the triangles, because the elements are represented as triangles. So I kind of put that in. You don't have to emphasize it. You can make this fountain look however you want. The concept here is that it's a symbol. And the symbol in general looks something like this. And we have, it can be decorated, the background can be, you could put anything in the back that you want to feel peaceful about. Anything that represents something that's going to remind you to have peaceful thoughts of your future. Something that gives you hope for the future. Something that you're infatuated with. Maybe you love to draw horses or cars or whatever it is that brings you joy. Add that to the back of this. This doesn't need to be plain. This can be the symbol on top of something that means something to you. So the symbol itself is earth, ground, or mass. Then we have the fountain of life. Then we have the tree of life. And we have the Fibonacci spirals on each side. Now the Fibonacci spirals represent the act of creation, and it's related to the Fibonacci sequence, which is a mathematical equation that creates this spiral, which much of the natural world grows by. The fact that it's on both sides of the tree represents duality. And duality means that we are part God and part man, and that we have to try to figure out how to manage the man part and listen more to the God part, who is all-knowing and knows how to align your life in just the right way. Then on the very top, above our fountain, or above our tree of life, we have our lotus. And our lotus represents rebirth and hope for our future. So the whole symbol itself represents creation. And we are drawing this so that we can put energy into a future that represents life and the hope of a better future. So, back to our stencil drawing here. We've gotten this far. Now, we can take our stencil, and it's a little bit confusing because the things that go on top are underneath the stencil. So you have to just pay attention to what you're doing. You're not going to want to draw this out just the way it comes to you. You have to use your imagination a little bit. So the tree actually just sits here, and you can pick even which branches you want to draw. But I just kind of rough it in a little bit. Now, draw any tree that you like. Maybe you love drawing trees. I know a guy that loves to draw trees, and he doesn't need this stencil to draw his own tree. So this is just to get you started. If you're feeling like you're not very confident about drawing a tree. All right, so I just rough that in. I've got a tree here. Now the branches, you're on your own. So you're going to have to just kind of think about how branches grow out. They don't get wider than the trunk of the tree. They're all going to be wider at the part next to the trunk, and then they get a little bit smaller. You can, make maybe 3 different branches that come off each of the little nubs that we've got, and maybe 3 won't fit everywhere because some of them are a little bit tight up here at the top where they're getting squeezed by that circle, or that Fibonacci spiral coming off. And you kind of look at the other side and you go, well, I probably need one that comes out that far over here. And you want to just kind of think about balance. And you don't have to overthink it. It's really a pretty simple concept here. You're just drawing a tree with some branches. Now, as I'm coloring this in, I can make these a little bit wider, but they don't have to be. They're pretty good just this way. All right, so I've got the tree on. The trick that I'm going to show you, though, is that I don't put in the leaves yet. It's much easier to draw around the outside of this and color all in your Fibonacci like this. Color all of this in before you add your leaves on top. I have found that to be a much easier way to go about this. If you're using this medium, if you're using a different medium, I'm just going to assume that you know what you're doing and you can just go at it however you want to. So then the last thing here is the lotus, and this lotus is a little bit tricky because we want to set it right down at the bottom here. We want to set that right on the top, right in the middle, because that is just blooming from above. And then I don't always, you can use a light colored pencil, but I don't use all of the lines that this lotus stencil represents. It's pretty easy. You can see where these leaves are, where the petals are rather, and I go up and down on each side, and then I pick only one side. But you know what? If you pick both sides, I have seen that work absolutely beautifully for most people. So just be aware that not all of those lines, because the nature of a stencil is that you have to have some pathway to follow to hold the paper together, because when you cut it, it'll just fall apart if you were to make it look exactly like this. So you have to use your own best judgment. So then the stencil comes out something like this. And then I just go back like I did with the fountain, and I kind of connect these a little bit. And that's pretty easy to do. And again, it doesn't need to be exactly perfect. Art is better when it's got a little bit of you infused in it. That's the whole point of this, isn't it? Is to infuse your work with you, the energy of you. All right, so there we have it. We've made the stencil. I'm going to outline this just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to switch over now to my watercolor pencils. You can use any watercolor pencils that you want, and again, you can use any medium that you desire. This is just my preferred medium right now to show you how to get started in a really simple way. Okay, well, we might as well start on this blue. That's kind of a dark blue. I think I'll go for a lighter one. Now, in this there's all different kinds of ways that you can decorate this, and this is just one where I went very light-handed. This one I wasn't very familiar with this medium. This is one of the first ones that I ever did. I was trying to see how little paint that I could use, and when I'm calling the pencil, this is the paint that you're applying, because you apply it and then you add water and spread it around. This one looks completely different, as you can see, because it's much darker and it's a completely different brand. This is the graphite pencils that I was using. They're this brand, Staedtler, and they give a whole different look. So it depends on what medium and what brand you have of watercolor pencils, but I think both of these are quite stunning. And then we've got a couple other ones here, like this one's quite vibrant. This one I went for an entirely different tree of life. This one is, I think, maybe the second one I ever did, and I was just playing around and seeing how you could get some reflection up here. So if you're thinking about this growing, and this is maybe like a glass dome, or I don't know, but you would see some of the reflection of the green up into the lotus. So those are some ideas that you can play with. They all come out just a little bit different. Now this one, I didn't like the quality of these watercolor pencils at all, so then I have been playing with a little bit more ink over the top, and that just changes the whole feel of it. When you're using watercolor pencils, if that's your medium, this is what it looks like on the side that you get wet, and this is what it looks like on the side that you leave dry. When you're using this medium, it's a good idea to think about the order in which that you are going to be coloring this. So like I said, I'm going to start right now with adding my blue in here, and I'm going to continue to see that darker rust colored kind of purpley line that I initially drew the stencil with. But this can be super fast, and yet it doesn't need to be. Invest a little time in making peace. Don't be in a race to get it done. Take as much time as you need. This is the time in which you imagine a brighter future. Don't complain in your head, I don't know how to do art, I don't know what I'm doing, I can't, this is hard. Don't talk to yourself that way. This is the time that you're practicing. This is something new that you've never done before. Just imagine that you're going to get better at it. This is the fun part too. Once you've got the image on, you can add your color in, and then when you add your water over the top, something magical kind of happens. So I'm going to take kind of a medium-sized to smallish brush here. I don't know what the name of this is. I don't think it even says it on it. So you're on your own with the brush, but get some small brushes. And it's like magic, the way that this color pencil, see, and I got a little bit of that tree wet, so that tree is going to bleed into there. If I go back to water, see, I see it start to bleed. If I start adding more water, it's going to bleed more and more and more. Don't do that. You can lay off of it a little bit and then come back to it when it dries so that you don't bleed it all together. So I'm trying not to hit the brushes of the tree or the branches of the tree with my brush, and I'm just trying to go and spread out that color. I colored the watercolor pencil on pretty lightly because you can always add more, especially once it gets wet. You can get in there a little bit with your colored pencil, and you can see that's going to make that spiral just pop in there against this blue, which is kind of cool. I kind of like that. So I'm going to just bring this all the way up here, and I got that purple going in, and I don't even mind. You do have to add quite a bit of water to your brush, so when the paint stops moving around, that's when you know you need to dip back into the water. So the water lifts that colored pencil off of the paper a little bit, it turns it into liquid, and then it reabsorbs it. So that's a thing to play with the watercolor pencils, because it does this magical, organic kind of way that it soaks into the paper, and it's really fun to play with a little bit. Some of it is totally by accident, and some of it you can really manipulate and see what happens. And once you get into it and have a little experience with it, you know, that's why I'm saying this is just practice. If you've never used these mediums before, if you've never, maybe you've never really done art since you've been an adult. Of course you're going to be a little bit rusty, but it doesn't mean that you can't play with it. It's really just meant to be something that brings your heart joy, just to think that you created something. But in this case, you're creating peace, which is even more important. So again, we're just going to get around this spiral here. Get the blue filled in. You don't have to be too particular, but you can see where if you had to try to paint around a bunch of leaves, it would be kind of frustrating. And since leaves are green, they can mix with the blue in the background and they come out great. So you don't need to stress about it. This shouldn't be stressful. Now, I think you can see that I've got some smearing going on, and quite honestly, I kind of like it. It's a little bit bluer on one side than the other. I like to kind of maybe think about the spiral and the creation and all of the energy flowing. And maybe I try to make my brush marks go like that if I can, but I don't need to stress out about it. It's not that kind of thing. All right, so now we're going to get serious, and I happen to think that trying to manage the colored pencils inside the box it's not nearly as fun. So take those babies out and get yourself comfortable now. All right. So the next thing that we like to get after is this base, and I like to think about the base as earth or mass. Of course, now I got the pencils in the way. And I kind of go after it in a very natural way. So when I was talking about how you let the water soak into the paper in a natural method, you know, it does this very beautiful, like a striation. I don't know exactly how to describe it. So I like to start with just some lines here. And I'm not coloring this in solid. I'm thinking about how the earth is at the bottom, and it's getting bigger and growing backwards, and I just like to try to play with the colored pencils, the watercolor pencils a little bit this way. And I did it with acrylics too in this similar manner. It's just my method. This doesn't need to be your method. I would love to see how you do your base, the thing that holds it all together, the ground. I like to imagine the symbol as the concept of when there was nothing. You know, if you call it God, universe, or source, there had to have been an idea of, I would like to experience myself. There needs to be more than just me, this energy of all-knowing out here. There needs to be mass, there needs to be ground and earth, and I like to imagine this symbol as that act of creation. The idea of nothing becoming something. So I just give this a background color, and then where the fountain is flowing into the ground, I give that a little bit more darker color. And I like to use scribbles because that's my method, and I think scribbles are fun and relaxing, and I don't have to stress out about it. And again, this is going to spread out when I add the water, so I don't have to be too particular about it. I can go at this light-handed. I can go back later and add ink over the top of it, which I've got a pen here and I can show you kind of what that method is after it dries just a little bit. But I like to think that the elements are adding some kind of weight and maybe little shadow, and they're pressing upon the earth, so I add a little bit of color, a little darker color, imagining that pressing upon the earth of the elements indents it in some way. I don't know, but again, maybe it makes it lighter. So if you want to, however you imagine it, I would love to see how you're going after it. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to this than I did with the Fibonacci spiral part. So I'm going to just get this wet. I just want to get after this and get this wet and get these blended in here a little bit. When you add them like this and you don't color them in solid, I think you get a real wood look to it, and I think that's pretty neat, and maybe that's enough. You know, you don't have to do any more than that. It does kind of matter how your brush strokes go. You know, if I was to just go crazy over this whole thing, it would ruin this effect. So you do want to be a little bit conscientious of how you're using your brush. This particular brush is maybe not the ideal brush for watercolors because it's a little bit stiff, but it kind of, it's like a broom, a wet broom, and you're blending with a broom, obviously a very small broom. And see, I got that going into that. This is my first stream here. I'm going to just kind of fix that so that that doesn't keep. And then I'll do it on the other side because then we'll have the same base color there. So I'm just spreading that out so it doesn't, because sometimes this watercolor will dry into the paper and then you can't lift it back out. But sometimes if you make a mistake, you can lift it right back out. So. And I would just like to point out that I am not an expert in watercolor pencil in any manner. I am a newbie. I have just made it quite a few times. All these that I was showing you earlier, that's about my extent of my knowledge with watercolor pencil, but I am loving it more and more the more I use it. I don't think it would be my medium of choice though. I prefer oil. But for the ease of use and the creation of this symbol, I have found it to be very enjoyable. And again, watching that water and the way you can manipulate the water on the paper and watch it kind of blend in is really nice. So once I've got this quite wet, and that was on purpose. So now I've got this wet and I can go in. And I'm adding some little scribbles, but I'm thinking about, where this indent is because the fountain is flowing. If I dip my pencil into the water, then I can get the paint to come out kind of thick and it still does this beautiful seep into the paper kind of thing that's all natural. But I'm just adding a little bit of color this way. I think it's kind of fun. It's a different way of using the watercolor pencils. So that's another advantage, is that it's not just mix and apply paint. You get to kind of manipulate the pencil a little bit. And it's pretty fun to see how you can get the color to come out of it. I want to make this accessible to people. I want it to be something that you're not overwhelmed with and that you can just jump in and start doing. It's a little bit, more intense than just picking up a coloring book, but I also think that it's more beneficial as well because you get to truly infuse yourself into this piece of art. And it represents peace and our dedication as a society, as a worldwide society of human beings, to create peace. That's why it shouldn't be rushed. All right, and then you want to deal with the top part. And I just kind of think about everything is bubbling up out of the mass and in through the fountain and then down the sides. What does that look like? Well, I thought dealing with the triangles was probably the easiest way to do that. I thought it was kind of a challenge. So the triangles give you something that it's coming off of. It's flowing out. And purple's great color because it goes with all the rest of them. So I use a little bit of red and I do it's flowing downwards like this. It's coming right out of it. And then it's going to be inside here too. So I think about, adding a little bit of color around the edge of this oval. And then I get in here with the purple again and I add a little of that. And then I got to go back to my blue. And I add that. And then I'm going to color these down. These are blue. And then I want to add some of this lighter color. Because it's all coming out of the fountain, right? So it's coming out and then it's making itself into each of these elements. I'm just going to try to get these wet and hope that they kind of stay right where they are. Because I like the effect of that. So we'll get this blended up in here now. And I'm going to let that orange set. I'm not going to go after that right now. I think that's just a problem waiting to happen. So I'm going to go after this tree instead. And again, it's a little bit problematic if you have to work around wet areas. So think about where your hand is resting. Don't just go right in and rest your hand down in a wet spot. These are the things you got to think about when you're doing art. Be aware of what you're trying to accomplish. I want to give a little branch there. And again, you know, I kind of like the way that this pencil even looks, so I choose how much water I want to add to it. I like the tree to look natural. I like it to have some kind of texture to it. I like it to look like bark. And then I can choose how much water I want to add. And maybe I'll just go real light over it. I like to have the roots of the trees dipping into the fountain a little bit. That's kind of fun. And the tree is particularly fun because you can add quite a bit of your watercolor pencil on it, and then just because the blue is dry around it, it's only going to go in those spots where you're adding water now. So you can kind of get a fun bark like natural look by letting the colors kind of mingle together and then dry. But you can see it comes together really fast. So the lotus is a beautiful symbol. You can put intention into the lotus color. I'm just going to go for gold because I think gold represents higher consciousness, and well, this is kind of orangey, but anyway, I think gold is what we're going after today. So we're going to aim for a beautiful gold flower on top, and this was wet when I started using it. That's why I got a darker bit right there. The lotus has pointed tips, so you can change the lotus up if you want, but according to everything I've read, most lotuses, as you know, they grow out of the muck and the mud, and they bloom with beautiful blooms that have there's no sign that they came from muck or mud at all. They just bloom and they're absolutely perfect and beautiful. So what a beautiful representation of life that we can put atop of our image of peace. And I'm using this watercolor pencil in an entirely different way. I'm going right at it dipping it right into the water. That's kind of what's fun about these, is that you can just kind of wing it and see what happens. And I'm liking that so far. I kind of think about where the light would be coming. So obviously I've got light a little bit more on this side. This side's a little bit heavier on the light, but this is just my interpretation. Nobody needs to be doing it exactly the way I'm doing it. And give this a nice heavy orange base, and then I'm going to go in with the golds here. And I got some yellow. I think we'll color in the yellow and use the brush and see what happens. See if we can get a good gold color. I think we should probably have a little pink in there too, because gold, you know, gives us a little pink shimmer sometimes. So we'll go with a little of this. I think it's best to try not to overthink it. You know, the first time you do something, you're going to give it a little more effort, but it's just the first time. So think about how you're going to create peace multiple times. And learn something new each time. Maybe you're going to do it in a different medium. I've got a table at home I want to add peace to. I want to put it right on my table. So there's all kinds of different things that we could be doing with this image, and I can't wait to see what y'all do. All right, so now I'm going to just try to blend this in. I think I could go with a little bigger brush though. And I'm just going to get that darker line that I outlined with blended in a little bit. I like that. Art unlocks your brain. It allows you to have more flexible thinking, people who work corporate jobs, you'll find that you have more capacity for creative problem solving. And we all know that we're searching out creative solutions to the problems that plague us right now. So I believe that creating art is going to unlock our minds to find the solutions to the problems that we have yet to uncover. So I'm going to hold back on doing too much more to that. And now I'm going to actually get after these leaves. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to use my pencil. You can create all kinds of different size of leaves. You can go after big ones to fill in the space, or you can just spend all kinds of time making little tiny ones and see what happens. So I'm going to do a little bit of mix of both, and as I'm adding them, I kind of look at where, would be a good spot to add a big one. So you want to kind of pull yourself back away from the art and assess it as you're creating it. I'm not real happy with the way these are looking right at the minute, but I'm not going to stress it. I'm going to keep putting them on until I feel like that's a good balance of the greens. Maybe one over here. Couple little small ones up here because we're expanding up. We're going to grow right up out of that containment here. And we can always add yellow to this as well because we've got a blue background, and our blue and our yellow together is going to make a nice green. Alrighty, so now that I'm this far, I can take a pen. And if you're not this brave, don't worry. You can do anything you like to it. This is your creation. The pen is a little bit scary. I'm putting the glasses on for that part so I can see what I'm doing. I've got some parts where, now that I can see it a little better, I've got colors going into other colors, but I kind of like it. I like the organic feel of that. So I'm going to go here and just add line where I think I need just a little bit more definition. And this again is entirely up to you. And if you're not brave enough to do this part, don't worry. Maybe you will get brave. You can also use a watercolor marker. So any marker pretty much on the market that you can find, that like a Crayola marker, that would be another way that you can add a little bit of definition to this if you desire. I like how loose this has come out, and I'm just going to kind of stick with that whole concept and only highlight the stuff that I think I want to stand out a little bit more. So I like having each of the flows a little bit more defined, because I think when they would run into each other, then they would, I got a little mark on my paper because I wasn't following my own advice. See if we can lift that off quick. Get it blended in. There we go, saving the day. We didn't let that sit on there and dry up, so we were able to lift it off the paper a little bit. If it dries in, it's a little harder. Somebody might know that's there. Make sure it's not on my hand still. So I got to be a little more aware, lift my hand up off of here. Just come in with a little bit of mark here. This is fire. I'm going to give it a little bit of the, I like these triangles, so I'm going to kind of emphasize them just a little bit. And this again is just me. I just like that. So I got blue going into the fire here. I'm not going to care about that. I kind of like it. It's loose. We got flames coming down out of the fountain of life. everything's in motion and it's probably a little chaotic because things are being created from nothing, and we don't have to be too worried about it. We don't have to be overthinking it. I'm going to give these a little highlight. I like that. A lot of children's illustrators use ink and watercolor together, so I think it was from a video that I had watched when I was researching how to use watercolor pencils. So if you're going to do this project, watch some YouTube videos on how to use watercolor pencils. Or maybe you've come across our video because you've been looking to use watercolor pencils. Thank you for being here. Remember, like and subscribe to our channel so that you can follow more of our great content. All right, so I'm going to get in here and I'm going to define these roots a little bit. There's roots growing down in here, and I got a dark spot I want to create. This is a little hole, because that's what trees do. They get holes in them, or a branch fell off or something. And the water now has kind of seeped into the paper, so it's giving me these natural lines to kind of follow, and I can choose which ones of those that I want to emphasize and which ones that maybe I want to play down a little bit. But I really like them. I like that the watercolor kind of helps just make its own designs on the paper, and I really enjoy that a lot. So I'm going to think about where, again, I've got thinking about where the light is coming from, and it's kind of coming from up here, so I'm going to add a little bit of shadow underneath the underside of the branch, because that's where it would naturally fall if we had a little more light on it. And I'm going to give a little bit of squiggle, and I'm not too particular about my line. I think we want to keep the energy of this. We've got a lot of organic things happening with the way that the water has flown out, and some of the pencil line is still available and shows there, and I like that too. So I'm just gonna highlight a little bit here with the pen, let it be the way it is on the paper, and try not to overwork it too much. We're going for quick and easy and fun. And I don't want to stress about how perfect it is or how imperfect it is. So just a little bit more on those trees. And now, if I go in for the leaves, I want to maybe not do every little bit and just kind of give a little highlight here and there. And I'm not gonna like overthink if oops, like that one didn't go exactly the way, oh gosh, I could be like, oh, and beat myself up in my head. Don't do that. It's just practice. Have fun with it. This is the time to think about a peaceful future. You're gonna sit and create peace and imagine a future where our problems are already solved. We don't have to think about what those solutions are ourselves, because those problems are probably not ours to solve. We send energy towards the idea that they have been solved. That's our duty. The energy that we create and we bring to this future is what we will experience. So we want to create an energy around a good outcome. And you can see that by adding that a little bit of pencil line, or pen line, you're getting a little more definition. You can take things that don't really even look like leaves and kind of turn them into them. I got little blobs of paint here that kind of look like they could have been a leaf, and now I'm just outlining real light and real simple. And we turn those into something that looks a little more like a leaf. Kinda. Ooh. A little more line here, and we don't have to overthink it. Again, we're just for fun. Alrighty, I'm going to give this little base here a little more line, and I'm actually going to use a ruler for this because I want to give this from there to there just a little more definition, and on the bottom and up here on the top, and that really kind of just cements it into place. And I'm going light. I'm not going to give too much of a heavy hand to this. I want it to be light. I don't want you to be like, oh, there's pen on there. Just give a little on this side. And again, this is up to you. Don't add this part if it stresses you out. Alrighty, and then we're going to go at the lotus up here too. And I like to go as light-handed as possible on the lotus. I got a wet bit of paper here though, so it's not as agreeable. You want your paper to be a little drier when you're going in with the ink. But with markers, you can actually get them to kind of flow in and create additional bits of unique energy into your work by using the water-soluble markers, because they will flow into the paper in a unique way. So that's kind of fun to think about. And then right here, and I'm not going to go around the Fibonacci spirals at this point. I'm going to just leave those as they are. Get a little more highlight here. And I think that I can call that done. And then I put my name on it. Zini. I'm Zini Abraham. And this is Peace. And I would love for you to join me in making your own. You can find us on our website at projectcreatepeace.org. You can like, subscribe, and comment on YouTube, and you'll stay in touch with us and watch all of our exciting news coming forward. So thank you so much for watching.